Abū Muhammad al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf ibn al-Ḥakam ibn ʿAqīl al-Thaqafī, known simply as Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, was perhaps the most notable governor who served the Umayyad Caliphate. An extremely capable though ruthless statesman, a strict in character, but also a harsh and demanding master. He was widely feared by his contemporaries and became a deeply controversial figure and an object of deep-seated enmity among later, pro-Abbasid writers, who ascribed to him persecutions and mass executions. Origin and early life and career. Al-Hajjaj was born in California, 661 in the city of Taif in the Hijaz, in modern-day Saudi Arabia. His ancestry was not particularly distinguished. He came of a poor family, whose members had worked as stone carriers and builders. His mother, Al-Faria, had married, and been divorced by al-Mughīra ibn Shu'bah, appointed governor of Kufa by the first Umayyad Caliph, Muawiyah. As a boy, Al-Hajjaj acquired the nickname Kulab, with which he was later derisively referred to. His early life is obscure, except for his having been a schoolmaster in his hometown, another source of derision to his enemies. He participated in the Second Fitna, fighting in the battles of Hara near Medina and of al-Rabada, but apparently without particular distinction. His first public post, as governor of Tabala in the Tihama region, was also unremarkable. Soon after Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan assumed the throne, Al-Hajjaj left his hometown and went to the capital, Damascus, where he entered the security force of the Caliph. There he attracted Abd al-Malik's attention by the rapidity and efficiency with which he restored discipline during a mutiny of the troops destined to accompany the Caliph in his campaign against Musa'ib ibn al-Zubair in Iraq. As a result, the Caliph entrusted him with command of the army's rearguard. He apparently achieved further feats of valor, so that after the defeat of Musa'ib, Abd al-Malik decided to entrust him with the expedition to subdue Musa'ib's brother, the anti-Caliph Abdullah ibn al-Zubair in Mecca. In late 691 he set out from Kufa at the head of 2,000 Syrian troops. After taking over Taif unopposed, he halted there as Abd al-Malik had charged him to try to secure Ibn al-Zubair's capitulation by diplomatic means if possible, and to avoid shedding of blood in Mecca. Ibn al-Zubair however rejected the Umayyad offers, and al-Hajjaj, after receiving reinforcements and the Caliph's permission, moved to attack Mecca. The Umayyad troops bombarded the city with catapults from Mount Abu Qubais, not letting up even during the Hajj. Even the Kaaba was not spared, despite the presence of the assembled pilgrims. When a sudden thunderstorm broke out, which his soldiers interpreted as divine wrath, he was able to rally them and convince them that it was actually a sign of victory. Finally, in October 692, after 7 months of siege and the defection of several thousand of his supporters, including 2 of his sons, Ibn al-Zubair was killed alongside his last remaining loyal followers, fighting around the Kaaba. As a reward, Abd al-Malik gave al-Hajjaj the governorship of the Hijaz, Yemen, and al-Yamamah. As governor, al-Hajjaj led the Hajj in person in the years 73 and 74 and restored the Kaaba to the shape and dimensions it had originally, rejecting the alterations made by Ibn al-Zubair following the first Umayyad siege in 683. Al-Hajjaj was able to restore peace in the Hijaz, but his severity occasioned the frequent personal intervention of the Caliph, governor of Iraq. In early 694, Caliph Abd al-Malik sent al-Hajjaj to govern Iraq. This involved combining the governorships of Kufa and Basra, which had not been done since the days of Ziyad ibn Abi Sufyan 20 years earlier. The caliph had previously appointed his brother Bishr ibn Marwan governor of Kufa, but when he died in early 694, this experiment in family rule had clearly not been a success, and al-Hajjaj, whose ability and loyalty had been amply demonstrated, was appointed to this crucial post. The governorship of Iraq was indeed the most important and responsible administrative post of the Islamic State, as it comprised not only Iraq proper, but also included the lands conquered by troops from the two colony towns of Kufa and Basra, i.e., Persia, Khorasan and the other eastern provinces of the Caliphate. The governor of Iraq was therefore in charge of a huge super-province of viceroyalty stretching from Mesopotamia to the still expanding borders in Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent, comprising half of the Caliphate's territory and producing more than half its income. In addition, the post was of particular political sensitivity due to the long history of Kharijism and political dissent in Iraq, particularly in Kufa. This discontent was driven by various tribal, economic, and political factors. The population of Kufa contained people from almost all Arab tribes, but also many of those undesired elsewhere, such as the vanquished of the Ridda Wars. Although it dominated the fertile lands of the Sawad, many of these were assigned by the Umayyads to princes of the dynasty, while the average Kufan was given land as a stipend for military service, but as the size of the stipend was determined by the earliness of conversion to Islam, many received only minuscule grants. Finally, the Kufans were largely left out of the spoils of conquest in the east. It was the Basrans who secured the lion's share, taking over far more extensive and richer territory like Khorasan or Sind, while the Kufans were left with the mountains of Jibal and central Persia as the city's sole dependencies. Al-Hajjaj's purview originally excluded Khorasan and Sistan, but in 697 he received these two provinces as well, expanding his rule over the entire eastern half of the Caliphate. He remained in this post until his death in 714, and throughout this period, encompassing the remainder of Abd al-Malik's reign and most of that of his successor al-Walid, he would be the dominant feature in the sources. Relations with the caliphs al-Hajjaj was, in the words of A. Dietrich, the most loyal servant that a dynasty could wish for, and his loyalty was reciprocated by Abd al-Malik with his full trust. The relationship was further strengthened through family ties. Al-Hajjaj's daughter wed Masruh, son of al-Walid I, while the daughter of his brother Muhammad was wed to the future Yazid II. Yazid even named his firstborn son after al-Hajjaj, who in turn named his first three sons after members of the dynasty. This close relationship is further evidenced by the many surviving letters exchanged between the two men. Al-Hajjaj's relationship with Abd al-Malik was much different than with the latter's successor al-Walid, with whom the correspondence was restricted to their official functions. On the other hand, while Abd al-Malik was able to restrain his overzealous governor whenever he was extortionate in the raising of taxes, was too liberal with public resources, or was shedding more blood than was necessary, al-Walid considered himself in al-Hajjaj's debt because he had championed the succession of al-Walid against Abd al-Malik's brother Abdulaziz ibn Marwan, and the new caliph allowed his powerful governor free rein and relied heavily on his counsel even in the appointment and dismissal of officials. If his meddling in the succession had secured him the favor of al-Walid, it had also caused the declared enmity of al-Walid's brother Sulayman. Furthermore, he had championed the cause of Yazid ibn al-Muttalib, whom al-Hajjaj had imprisoned. The possibility of Sulayman's accession so frightened al-Hajjaj that he wished not to outlive al-Walid. Ibn al-Ash'ath's revolt and aftermath. Arriving at Kufa, al-Hajjaj gave an inaugural sermon at the local mosque that has become famous and is often cited as an example of Arab eloquence. The situation he found was one of disorder. The troops of Basra and Kufa, ostensibly garrisoned at Ramhomas under al-Muttalib ibn Abi Sufyan, had instead, upon the death of Bishr, left the camp and were idling in the cities. In order to restore discipline, al-Hajjaj announced that any man who did not within 3 days return to the camp would be put to death and his property be left open to plunder. This proved effective, but when he went to the troops to distribute the pay, al-Hajjaj faced another mutiny under Ibn al-Jarrad because of making cuts in pay that the troops refused to accept. These problems overcome, al-Hajjaj sent the troops against the Kharijites. In 696, al-Muttalib defeated the Azarika, who had rallied around Qatari ibn al-Fujr as their anti-caliph, and in spring 697 another Kharijite leader, Shabib ibn Yazid, was defeated on the Dujail River in Khuzestan with the aid of Syrian troops. In the same year, al-Hajjaj suppressed the rebellion of the governor of Madain, al-Mutrif ibn al-Mafira ibn Shuba, who had allied with the Kharijites. These campaigns eradicated the Kharijite rebellion, but came at a cost to his relationship with the Iraqis. The campaigns against the Kharijites were extremely unpopular, and measures like the cuts in pay, according to UN Kennedy, almost have goaded the Iraqis into rebellion, as if looking for an excuse to break them. The explosion came in 699, when he had been conferred the governorships of Khorasan and Sistan. Al-Hajjaj had given it to al-Muttalib, but in Sistan, the situation was far more unstable, and the country had to be essentially reconquered. An army under the local governor Ubayd Allah ibn Abi Bakr had suffered a heavy defeat against the ruler of the kingdom of Zabilistan, known as the Zunbul, and now al-Hajjaj ordered Abd al-Rahman ibn Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, the most preeminent member of the Kufan aristocracy, to lead an army against the Zunbul. This army was drawn from the Kufan soldiery, and such was the splendor of its equipment, or perhaps the proud and haughty manner of the Kufan soldiers and Ashraf who composed it, that it became known in history as the Peacock Army. This expedition marked the beginning of a rebellion that came close to destroying not only al-Hajjaj's, but also Umayyad Caliphate in Iraq. Ibn al-Ash'ath led his army to Sistan, and, as a Dietrich writes, at first carried out his campaign carefully and according to orders. He pacified each territory as it was conquered, ensured supplies and accustomed his troops gradually to the different climatic conditions. Al-Hajjaj, however, sent letter after letter to his commander, demanding an immediate assault against the Zunbul. The tone of these letters was extremely offensive, and he threatened to dismiss Ibn al-Ash'ath and appoint his own brother Ishaq to command the expedition instead. Al-Hajjaj's harsh tone and unreasonable demands, as well as the army's evident reluctance to continue such a protracted and arduous campaign so far from the homes, provoked a widespread mutiny. Led by Ibn al-Ash'ath himself, a rebel army marched back to Iraq, growing to over 100,000 strong in the process as they were joined by other malcontents, and being transformed from a mutiny against al-Hajjaj, denounced as an enemy of God and a latter-day pharaoh, to a full-blown anti-Umayyad movement. Al-Hajjaj tried to stop them at Tustar, but the rebels were victorious. Al-Hajjaj abandoned Basra to the rebels, and Ibn al-Ash'ath entered the city in triumph. Reinforced with Syrian troops, al-Hajjaj managed to score a minor victory, after which the bulk of the rebel army left Basra for the natural stronghold, Kufa. Al-Hajjaj recaptured Basra and pursued Ibn al-Ash'ath to Kufa, encamping near the city. Ibn al-Ash'ath's progress had sufficiently alarmed the Umayyad court that they sought a negotiated settlement, even though they kept sending Syrian reinforcements to al-Hajjaj. Abd al-Malik offered to dismiss al-Hajjaj, appoint Ibn al-Ash'ath as governor over one of the Iraqi towns, and raise the Iraqis' pay so that they received the same amount as the Syrians. Ibn al-Ash'ath was inclined to accept, but the more radical of his followers, especially the scholars known as Qurra, refused, believing that the offered terms revealed the government's weakness, and pushed for outright victory. The two armies eventually met in the Battle of Day al-Jamajim in April 701, which resulted in a crushing victory for al-Hajjaj and his more disciplined Syrians. Kufa surrendered after that, and al-Hajjaj further undercut Ibn al-Ash'ath's support by promising amnesty to those who surrendered, providing however that they acknowledged that the rebellion had been tantamount to renouncing Islam. Those who refused were executed. The remnants of the rebel army fled to Basra, but were soon evicted and pursued by the Syrians to Khuzestan and Sistan. There Ibn al-Ash'ath sought refuge with Azunbal, but was either assassinated by the latter or committed suicide to avoid being surrendered to al-Hajjaj. Most of his remaining followers tried to reach Herat, but were defeated by al-Muhallab's son Yazid ibn al-Muhallab, who surrendered those of southern Arab provenance but let the North Arab go. The failure of Ibn al-Ash'ath's revolt led to the tightening of Umayyad control over Iraq. In 702 al-Hajjaj founded the city of Wasit, situated midway between Basra and Kufa, where he moved his seat. There he gathered all Syrian troops present in Iraq, ostensibly in order to rein in the Syrians and prevent excess at the expense of the populace. But in reality his aim was to isolate the Syrians from the locals and solidify their loyalty to him. Henceforth Iraq passed under virtual Syrian occupation, and the Iraqis, regardless of social status, were deprived of any real power in the governance of the region. Al-Hajjaj was now the undisputed master not only of Iraq but of the entire Islamic East. Only the governor of Khurasan, Yazid ibn al-Muhallab, retained some autonomy. Although Yazid was able to refuse several summons to Wasit, finally in 704 al-Hajjaj persuaded the caliph to dismiss him, and Yazid was put in prison. Campaigns of expansion. As governor of Iraq and viceroy of the East, al-Hajjaj supervised a major wave of expansion. He appointed Muhammad ibn al-Kashim to lead the conquest of the Sind and northwestern India, Qutayba ibn Muslim to conquer Transoxiana, and Mujah ibn Sayyar to Oman. Although al-Hajjaj himself undertook no campaign during these years, his role was essential. Not only did he select the generals who carried out these campaigns, but also prepared them very carefully, sparing no expense, since he calculated that with victory he would recover his expenses many times over. The relationship between Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf and Muhammad ibn Kashim has always been one of great debate. Many accounts list Al-Hajjaj as being his uncle or father-in-law. Domestic government and reforms. Already in 695, Al-Hajjaj began minting the new gold and silver coins, which superseded the Byzantine and Sasanian coins still used until then. He established mints at Kufa and later in Wasit, under the supervision of a Jew named Sumayr, and decreed strict punishments for counterfeiters. The new coins contained the name of Allah, and hence were initially opposed by many theologians who argued that they would also be used by infidels, but they quickly became a success and helped to promote the circulation of money and and the stabilization of economic conditions. Al-Hajjaj also ordered the translation of the tax registers into Arabic from the Persian in which it had hitherto been kept, so that he could supervise it personally. Following his victory over the Iraqis, Al-Hajjaj began a series of reforms aimed at restoring tranquility and prosperity to the troubled state after almost 20 years of civil war and rebellions. He invested much effort in reviving agriculture, especially in the Sawad, and thereby increasing revenue through the Kharaj land tax. He began to restore and expand the Sasanian-era network of canals in the lower Iraq. According to al-Baladuri, he spared no expense to repair embankments when they broke, awarded uncultivated lands to deserving Arabs, and took measures to reverse the flow of the rural population to the cities, especially the new converts. As part of his efforts to strengthen uniformity in the state, he also tried to introduce a definitive, uniform version of the Quran so as to eliminate theological quarrels. The division of the text into 30 parts seems to have been part of this reform. Al-Hajjaj's version also probably included new vowel diacritics, and purged the text of any references hostile to the Umayyads. He declared this version to be the only valid one, while prohibiting the use of Ibn Mas'ud's Qira. Al-Hajjaj died at Wasit in Iraq in 714. The year after, Al-Walid died as well, and his brother Sulayman ibn Abd al-Malik came to power. Sulayman was indebted to many opponents of Al-Hajjaj for the political support in getting him elected caliph, so he recalled all of Al-Hajjaj's generals and had them tortured to death in prison. Reign as recounted in the Chachnama. The Chachnama is the oldest chronicle of the Arab conquest of Sind. The primary reason noted in the Chachnama for the expedition by al-Hajjaj against Raja Dahir was the raid by pirates off the coast of Dibal, resulting in the capturing both gifts to the caliph from the king of Serendib as well as the female pilgrims on board who were captured. The Chachnama reports that upon hearing of the matter, al-Hajjaj read a letter to the Raja, and upon unsuccessful resolution being reached, launched a military attack. Other reasons attributed to al-Hajjaj's interest was in gaining a foothold in the Makran, Balochistan and Sindh regions, protecting the maritime interests, and to teach the armies from Sindh a lesson, for participating alongside Persians in various battles such as those at Nahrawan, Salazal and Qadisiyah, and the granting of refuge to fleeing rebel chieftains. Palestine. The two sons of al-Muhalib, an Azdi former governor of Khorasan and a military commander under al-Hajjaj, took refuge in Palestine with two Azdi retainers of the governor there. Finding themselves now hounded angrily by al-Hajjaj against a background of intertribal rivalry and accused by him of embezzlement, the Caliph, Al-Walid I, issued an order to his brother, Sulayman ibn Abd al-Malik, the pro-Azdi governor of Palestine, to send the sons of al-Muhalib to Damascus. Sulayman sent the elder brother Yazid and his own son in chains to the Caliph, who, however, showed them mercy. Points of criticism. Al-Hajjaj killed two companions of Muhammad, Abdallah ibn al-Zubair and the last companion of Muhammad, Jabir ibn Abdallah. While besieging the city of Mecca, al-Hajjaj crucified Abdallah ibn al-Zubair and said, "No one can take down his body except Asma. She must come to me and ask permission of me, and only then will his body be taken down." He is recorded by Thalabi as one of the 4 men to have killed more than 100,000 men. It was mostly due to his numerous campaigns and the many uprisings and revolts against the empire during his reign. Bibliography. Blankenship, Gli Jafar. The End of the Jihad State, The Reign of Hisham ibn Abd al-Malik and the Collapse of the Umayyads. State University of New York Press. ISBN 9780791418277. Brown, Edward Granville, Islamic Medicine, 16. ISBN 8187570199. Crone, P. Al-Muhallib B. Abi Sufra, The Encyclopedia of Islam, New Edition, Volume 7, Mifnaz, Leiden and New York, Brill, p. 357. ISBN 9004094199. Dennett, Daniel Clement, Conversion and the Poll Tax in Early Islam, 38. Dietrich A. Al-Hajjaj DJ at JB. Yūsuf, The Encyclopedia of Islam, New Edition, Volume 2, CG, Leiden and New York, Brill, pp. 39-42. ISBN 9004070265. Fry, Richard Nelson, Zaringkub, Abdul Hossein al. Cambridge History of Iran. 4. Gil, Moshe, A History of Palestine. 634-1099. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. ISBN 978-0-5215-9984-9. Porting, Gr. The First Dynasty of Islam. The Umayyad Caliphate AD 661-750. London and New York. Routledge. ISBN 0-415-240727. Kennedy, Hugh N. The Prophet and the Age of the Caliphates. The Islamic Near East from the 6th to the 11th Century. Harlow, UK. Pearson Education Limited. ISBN 0-582-40525-4.